everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. We will call the Public Safety Committee to order here at 2:01, and we're going to kick things off today with an update and report on public health and safety and some next steps. And we'll invite to the podium our Deputy City Manager, Kate Behrens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So we are here to conclude a body of work that this committee has been doing since December timeframe. So I'll just have a little bit of a PowerPoint, and then we would really like to turn it over to the chair to facilitate discussion of kind of the final recommendation that we're looking for the City Commission. So today's objectives, which I've just said without advancing the slide, so apologies for that, but we were here in April and we outlined a number of things from that April report. So here on the slide, the black text is actions and improvements and activities that the city has undertaken since December through April. And those are things within the city's resources to control, so enforcing existing ordinances, improving our protocols across a variety of city staff that work in the space of health and safety, particularly downtown. So that would be our HOT team, our police, our partners at the DGRI with their ambassadors around protocols related to personal property or items in public Parks Department as well, in parks or on public rights of way. We've worked with Public Works as well to establish then proactive cleaning programs that reinforce and are based on that aligned understanding of what is allowed under our current ordinances. And we talked about coordinating some of our complaint referrals across 311 and again, other responsible entities, including private property owners and DGRI, when it comes to cleanup of public health issues and some additional investments we've made. The text in green are new things that we have launched since April, so I just want to highlight those a little bit. We have described to this body some systems improvement work that is underway through the various partner agencies that we rely on to provide social services, particularly services to address the unhoused or to increase housing stability. That work is underway. We heard a sense of urgency, though, as that work is underway to improve some on-the-ground service delivery to make sure that we have addressed as many folks as we can who are living unhoused, gotten them into the system of coordinated entry and housing referral system, and provided the resources that are needed to have those folks be ready for housing when they are matched to a unit. So we've done a couple things to address that sense of urgency, even as the system improvement work continues. So that is here something I'll call the Fusion Center in quotes. I'm sure there's terms of arts and other art used in other communities, but we have partnered with Crossroads Bible Church, which was providing on a weekly basis a one-stop location for many folks to receive some kind of social and support services and have access to other services, laundry, shower facilities. We approached Crossroads Bible Church, so we hear that's working really well. We know a lot of our members that are living unhoused are familiar with this area and with the volunteers that work at the Bible Church. Could we build on that, and could we bring some more services to this location on Tuesdays? And they nodded their head yes, and we've been building up some additional services at that location. We hope that as we continue to expand services there and test what this tells us about the process of getting housing ready and getting matched to housing units, that information will fold back into some of the systems improvement work, including the work around coordinated and aligning street outreach. So what we're building at that location right now is the ability for someone to come, have a housing assessment, make sure their information gets into HMIS, then also have the disciplines right there on site to help with some of those documentation and verification steps that are needed to actually be able to move into a unit once you're matched to one. So sometimes there's medical or mental health diagnoses that are needed, and can you just on Tuesday morning when you're there, get that paperwork done. So that's what we're trying to build up there, and we'll feed that learning into the systems improvement work. We are also working right now with some service providers and some funders to increase some rapid rehousing investments, particularly focused on the downtown area where we know we have several individuals that have been living unhoused, and that will allow us to really work deliberately through some case management and really diligent efforts to, again, make sure those folks are housing ready in the system, ready to be matched up, and then also out there finding units to match people into, and in the meantime having conversations about how folks can stay safe until they have permanent housing. So all of that, I just wanted to update this committee on. Those are investments that we are making, that we continue to make, and that we take the information we're learning and share it with our social service partners and build that into some of our system improvements. So that brings us to today's discussion, which is really kind of asking this committee to finalize and communicate back to the City Commission that initial question in December. So if you recall, and I've recounted this a couple times now in front of this committee, this conversation began in front of the City Commission in December with some requests from stakeholders for additional ordinances. We embarked on a number of things to address the public health and safety concerns that came forward with that request. So now that you are aware of that, we're asking you to both endorse the effectiveness of those things that I just described, and then sort of resolve among yourselves and create a recommendation to the City Commission about whether you believe any ordinances of the nature described here on this slide would be worth further deliberation in front of this full City Commission. So just to run through them quickly, the ordinances are around conduct and around personal property. So there's conduct-related ordinances that could be focused on prohibiting sitting or lying outside of designated areas within the public rights-of-way. Also related to conduct around financial transactions and financial institutions and facilities conduct that could be intimidating or harassing. And then related to personal property and items in public spaces, again, limiting storage of personal property or items in public rights-of-way, and addressing property and accumulation and storage of property in our public parks. So those are the regulatory approaches that, if looking across what we have available to us already on the books, either are not on the books or could use some additional refinement or further definition. And so we welcome any questions about those. I will just show you the next steps. So we're looking for affirmation from this group of the service enhancements and additional investments in supportive services that we outlined in April and enhanced today. We're looking for your discussion and final recommendation on any additional ordinances that you would advise the City Commission to further deliberate on. We do not have draft regulations in front of you. Any particular area that you would recommend the Commission consider further regulations on will then be crafted with the City Attorney's Office. As you can imagine, these are some very carefully crafted ordinances to make sure that we are treating everyone equally and being very clear about the conduct or the circumstances that are going to be enforced so that they can both be enforced, administered, and upheld. So I'll go back to the list of ordinances and turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, for discussion.
Thank you, David, for your presentation. So at this point, I think we'll start some dialogue just about what we've been presented since December, and a multitude of meetings and some internal conversations that have been ongoing. I can turn to my colleagues first if there's anyone that would like to kick it off. Commissioner Sassi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation today, Kate. I want to kind of highlight a couple of things, and I will definitely be able to provide an answer. So I know City Manager, we're all, I think, ready to identify a path. This has come to us even, prior to this new body that we are all a part of. One, I want to say, to highlight on that first slide or the second slide, the work that has been done in just the last couple of months, those additional city initiatives, some of this is tactical, but some of this is really going to the greater strategy around how we need to evolve, just as We've tried to figure out, investments in the housing fund, which we just approved and hopefully will affirm tonight. This is significant, so I do want to highlight that, and many thanks to the city staff for kind of unraveling it. I think many of the top leadership have come from cities that have also dealt with the realities of growth and growing disparity, sort of in neighbors, right? And so what we don't want to do is we want to continue to grow. We want this to be a vibrant city, and we also have to deal with these realities of it's not the Grand Rapids that I grew up in, right? So I do want to highlight that. I think, I pulled a document that just kind of highlighted all the investments that the city has made ourselves individually and working with other individuals, whether it's, funding that we provided for homeless service and shelter, allocating support for the Affordable Housing Fund, creation of the homeless outreach team. This was not something that was necessarily part of city work, but now exists because of, our response. So I really want, I think there's a lot of narratives forming, and we all have to, we all have run, some of us up here have run campaigns, and we have to have a certain narrative. I think the narrative must be moving forward that the city of Grand Rapids is a partner with neighbors, with businesses, with building this community, because we have actually the dollars and cents and the time that show that we want this investment here. And so, I kind of give that as a precursor, Mr. Chair, because I think we're sort of at the point where how do we do the least amount of harm to those who are experiencing mental health, addiction, homelessness, and not to categorize everyone, and also recognizing that we want people who experience the city to feel safe, that people want to continue to come into our spaces, that we can continue to make those investments. And so, today in our committee of the whole, we gave our approval for the budget. And one of the things in there, it's an increase, and I know I've got a couple messages like it's an increase, but I think it is a path forward to some of this work around our Clean Community Initiative. This is something we've consistently heard. Again, I think our job up here, we represent our individual wards, but to think holistically about the city. And so what I think that path forward of the Clean Community Initiative, and thank you for presenting that, City Manager, is how do we operationalize this in terms of actual action for our public works individuals, and also then those that might have so much property that could go into like a hoarding situation can also be put into a space to get some support and treatment and things like that. We have a hoarding task force, and that might mostly be in homes. But, for me, I would say, especially around the items, that feels like it rises to a level of public health, the cleanliness, sort of where things are, as well as just not wanting to obstruct like rights of way for individuals to be able to go into different spaces. So let me take that first, Mr. Chair, as like, that's an answer to that. I would be supportive of, in our next meeting, our June meeting, for that to come back to us for that action. So I will say that. I would also say that I want to say thank you to our police department. I see Captain Riley. I think others had to be somewhere else, kind of switching off and doing duty. We heard about some response times and different things like that. I think those, we know we're still, in this budget also has support for continue to get to that sworn level of 305 that we're at, 304, 305. So that investment also says that, and I think that the budget is that document that shows that support. It's not going to happen overnight. I think Chief talked at the last meeting, probably Mayor asked that like next summer would be looking at perhaps, and knowing that we've also made some investments in technology. So I think it's always that balance of the support and the enforcement. We heard some other stories from the chief. So I want to say thank you for that, because I think that has been part of this process as well. It's not the only one. We cannot put everything on our police department. We want them to build good community relations. For me, I think I wholeheartedly can say I do not support a general sit-lie ordinance, Mr. Chair. That to me feels like that goes too far, does not consider the realities of how people are experiencing Grand Rapids. I would be supportive of, as we look at bullet point 3, what are, and maybe the word isn't financial transaction, but if it's a way that people are prevented from experiencing the city or I think city attorney can help us with that language, but essentially where it creates, I'm thinking, I think a colleague has said in the past, like if you're going into an ATM and somebody's right out there, what is that dynamic that is created? So how can we do something that is defined? Still not like my most favorite thing that I'm talking about today, but to me, I want to look for the solutions with this body. We all have different points of view, different experiences. So to clarify, I am not supportive of a blanket sit-lie ordinance. I do support tying personal storage pieces to our Clean Community Initiative, and then looking at that language around, whatever that might be, I'll say financial transaction. So what I really hope is that this gives us some cohesiveness to move forward. We have a lot of exciting projects that are obviously going to benefit maybe, physically downtown, and obviously that's part of the city I represent, and I'm very proud to, but I also want other people to feel like they can come down here and be supported. And so, this is not, I think it really kind of takes conversations, but also like, how will we move forward? Because I want to move forward. I quite honestly, I don't want to continue to I want to have conversations that are productive, that are going to move us forward, and are going to help us meet our strategic plan and spend good use of this public dollars that we have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Moody?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Behrens, for this report. I appreciate everything that we've heard today. I echo some of the thoughts of my colleague, Commissioner Yasasi. I am in favor of all of the approaches that we discussed. I do know that we will not be able to get them all, but the ones that are important are key to us. It is important for us to understand that, throughout the United States, we have a homeless problem throughout this whole country. But the most important thing is that what are we going to do with our situation here in Grand Rapids so that it doesn't become any worse? I've traveled the country, I've traveled the world, and I've seen homeless situations all over. It's important that we do something, that we rectify the situations that is occurring. The problem that I do have along with this is the fact that we have supporters in our city who should be supporting us, but instead of supporting us, speaking negatively of us. And I think it's important that we realize that if we all work together and come up with a solution, that we can handle what's taking place in this city. To say it bluntly, to tell other industries not to come to Grand Rapids takes away from the city of Grand Rapids, takes jobs away from the city of Grand Rapids, and it also possibly could take homes away from individuals who could possibly live in homes that have a decent place to live. We hurt ourselves when we speak negatively of our city. Grand Rapids is considered to be the top 10 city in America to come live in. If it's that, then let's make it that for real. But the most important thing is that we do have to come to these approaches, make some decisions, and allow the city to do what it needs to do, that we can grow the city to be better than what it is today.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the comments of both of my colleagues. I guess I'll jump in here and just bring up, as we talk about regulatory approaches, I appreciate the willingness of my colleagues to consider some gaps. And I think that's what we talked about originally when it was presented in December. Let's take a moment. Let's see what's on the books. Let's see what's available, what tools we have available in our toolbox. And, if we don't have the right tool in the toolbox to work on addressing some things, then do we need to, add some more tools? And I think adding a few of these tools in a strategic capacity with some secondary support efforts to it, I think will send a signal that we're serious about this issue in Grand Rapids, that we're serious about creating a community that's welcoming to everyone, and also is working on support systems to help those who might not have the means to be able to adequately take care of themselves or seek the supports they need. And so I believe there has to be a compassionate response, but also a firm response, that there are behaviors that are negative, that are impacting all of us, that are infringing upon the ability of people to enjoy our public streets and enjoy our parks, and be able to feel confident about participating in the local economy, whether as a business owner, as an employer, or as a tourist or a guest to our community for the first time. And so I hope and believe that with both the potential adoption of some ordinance changes as well as the stuff that's on the books, I also think there's an incumbency upon not only the city of Grand Rapids, but our service providers, our partners in the mental health space, our partners in the philanthropic space, so to begin also educating folks about what the expectations are for our community, that there are certain behaviors that we're not going to tolerate in Grand Rapids because they are leading to negative perceptions and negative outcomes for all of us. It's everyone's sidewalk, it's everyone's park, it's everyone's it's everyone's right of way, and so it needs to be accessible for our folks that are potentially disabled, that want to come downtown with their children. Like, all those things need to be respected. I would hope that we can, I too support Commissioner Yasasi's assertion around bringing some potential ordinance changes back in June for around the limiting of the storage of personal property in the public rights of way, around some sort of metrics or ordinance around what activities are acceptable related to certain types of defined financial transactions, as well as looking at what potential uses in our parks, park ordinance might need to be updated so that everyone can enjoy our park spaces. So I don't know if I want to turn to any of the members of the, the non-elected members of the Public Safety Committee, if they have any thoughts or observations. Mr. Fayan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to say to the point that I'm in favor of each of the suggested approaches, regulatory approaches. I would only caution that we use language that provides absolute clarity. So I'm sure we'll get another swing at that, and some legislative bodies will take a look at that. But I would not want anything to be interpreted either way, one way or the other. I'm a resident of downtown, so I live with this issue almost daily. Walking the Skywalk at night in the wintertime, as well as biking to Millennium Park. I have seen some improvements both in the Skyway and comments that were made supportive of businesses hiring additional security. That was obviously a presence. But I think that we need to continue to be very clear, and I'm most concerned about any language that allows for sitting in line in public places. As I walk up and down Monroe Center, what used to be the mall, and it was designed for public spaces and lots of walking retail work. I still see some violations that I'm concerned about. For instance, Sunday morning at about 11:30, walked down through and there were people, lying in the entries of business, and they may not have been open on Sunday, but they were in other places that felt inappropriate, to say the least. So I think I'm very pleased that we're trying to bring this to a head and to be definitive about action and appeal to our entire community to support it. So the other thing I would say is I think that Grand Rapids, compared to all other cities, is a workable, livable, and a strong business community, and we have a real heart for compassion. If you look at the 50 organizations that have been dealing with this issue for the past 10 years or more, they each offer specific services as they see the need, and I think that if we can mobilize some of that around a central theme, that we'll all be better off. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Golston, Mr. Kettle?
I echo the same sentiments. I'm just grateful for the extensive research that's been done. Every entity, every aspect. I'm grateful for, especially when we were able to read about reviews from some of the meetings with the unhoused youth. That truly speaks volumes because they are often ostracized and chastised, and their voices aren't normally heard. But we have to do something immediately, and it requires us to take a stance and to be transparent and clear about what we want here in the city of Grand Rapids, and we'd be concerned about the well-being of all personalities, and it's good to see the influx of jobs that can come as a result, and even some of the more work that will sometimes fall upon the hands of the various entities that are involved. But we have to be very concerned and intentional about making sure that the business sector, yes, is taken care of, the citizens are taken care of, all aspects as it pertains to also visitors that come to our city so we can be a welcoming city even the more. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Mr. Kettle? You don't have to talk, Ed. I know you
I
like
do.
to, but
I do. Well, again, I want to go back to responsibilities and whose are they. I will still stand on my chair here and say it's not the city's responsibility to handle mental health. And I think the county's sound asleep on it. They're too cheap to do anything. And but we have to force them to. I do know that everyone wants to be as humane as possible to people who are in bad shape, no question. However, a lot of those people aren't competent. If they had a family that was still involved with them or anyone who really cared about them, I'm sure they would be taken to a facility. We lack the facilities. We lack the beds. We're not prepared for this. We haven't been. We couldn't see the future, I guess, but we know it now. So I think we should be petitioning the governor to go full speed on creating some new facilities for people, or they can get the kind of care they need. Because this isn't going to stop if we don't do that. We're just, and there's a lot of people running around the hair on fire. I know that, but you just can't do it. It's not something that's doable right now. The humane thing to do is to understand that many of them aren't competent, and they should not be laying around in the street. If we are humane, we don't let people lay around in the street. That's just, figure out who we are. But that's really my main pitch, to be honest with you. I agree with everything you're doing. This is a perfect culmination of everything we've talked about. But it's still not getting the job. This will get a job done, but it's not getting the job done. And we need to, I don't think, it's not your responsibility to do this, but it's probably a responsibility to advocate strongly that the county and the city and the state climb on board here and do something and make a big stink about it. Why be afraid, There's people out here that are genuinely concerned about their economic abilities, given crazy market conditions, number one, and then add to this the level of disturbance that is visible in downtown all the time. And I appreciate that. I get it. People out for the long dollar, is scary. So I wish I was smarter, but I'm not. And but that's my deal. I volunteer. I'll do whatever I can to lobby Lansing on behalf of everyone and do whatever we can. But we have to. This is, how many more meetings do we have to have like this?
thank you. I'll turn it back to my colleague, Commissioner Isasi. Oh,
You wanna let City-
City Manager, did you want to jump in?
You go ahead, you haven't talked yet. I just had a follow-up to Ed.
Well, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, all right, okay. Such gentlemen up here. I just wanted to say, I appreciate that, Ed, and I think, like, the hot team is one example of that, right? Like, that was a response to not having that support. And it's frustrating, because we sit in meetings together, and, many of, we have overlapping areas, and I always say it's like, what's in our circle of control, circle of influence, and circle of concern. Unfortunately, can't tell, like, other entities what to do, but I think this, so in our budget sessions, we also talked about kind of going back in one particular, we can't just magically add more money, but looking at some of the things like around our 61st District Court, right? Which has increased significantly the costs associated with that. I think in a 7-year period, $3 million to $10 million, right? So that could be other dollars that we could, potentially braid and connect. And so to your point, Mr. Kettle, I think we will stay focused on that. We want to stay focused on that. There was a lot of consensus on the commission about that, because we have to figure out, like, why are we paying for all these things that somehow we're holding the bag, but we shouldn't be. So I want to, again, I'm agreeing with Ed. So I definitely agree with that. I also want to say this is probably less about action, but I think to the discussion point and other things that I heard, we do have entities. I think the reality, I lead an organization, a nonprofit in my day job, and we all get in front of people and we talk about the good work we're doing. And you've talked a little bit about this as we think about our annual investment programs and dollars. And it's not that good work isn't being done, but I think the world has changed so much that we have to continually ask ourselves, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the city is we have like Mr. Kane, Mr. Canfield, other people who are in the audience at our 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock meetings who are, after somebody has come to us, and quite honestly, sometimes it feels like you get knocked in the teeth about all the things that we did wrong, that you actually go to that person and say, how can we make this better? What was your experience? Like, not discounting people's experience. So I feel like this is some of that as well. And I would like us to see those that are partners in this work, that are part of, the continuum of care, to either come to those 7 o'clock meetings or come to those 2 o'clock meetings, because I think there's a lot of good information that is shared. And so then I think we won't be so far apart sometimes. And why does this conversation take so long? There was a lot of confirming what we knew that was like Grand Rapids continuum of care lore or whatever, that, other people, you have to go and see. I used to work in manufacturing. I'm not going to take what Joel is telling me. I have to go and see it for myself and understand how this system works. And so what I would say, it never feels good when somebody tells you something isn't right. It doesn't. Because on our websites, we have all the wonderful things that we're doing. It's like, we're great, just ask us. But we also have to figure out what are those lived experiences of people, and what are those nuances that are playing out that we don't want to discount, but understand how we could collectively fix together. So that's what I also want to say, because we can't change that. Like, this is what we can do ourselves, but I do think that does need to be said. And I appreciate some of those partners being in the room today and answering that call and being on conversations. But I also want to keep that as like a parallel path to this, to make sure we don't lose that connectivity. Thanks.
Mr. Chair. Actually, I think when we look at those points that are listed, 2 through 4, is what I'm
Where you're at, sir?
what I'm mindful of.
All right, very good. I appreciate that feedback. City Manager, do you want to hop in?
Yep. So let me first of all thank you, this committee, for this work. I know this is not the usual topic. You're normally talking about police department operational issues, fire department operational issues, and so this is a much broader topic around health and safety. And so I appreciate you diving into this and forth in the work of the staff. And it has been very comprehensive, and we have discovered a lot of things, both opportunities for improvement and opportunities to collaborate more, both with our nonprofit providers as well as other regulatory agencies in government. And so what it seems to me, and to Mr. Kettle's approach, I don't intend to bring this topic back again before this committee. We're asking for the recommendation today so this can advance to the City Commission. What I'm hearing is consensus around addressing the items of storage in the right-of-way, looking at potential changes to ordinances around loitering and around certain areas of financial commerce, and revisions to address the uses of parks, timing of parks, as well as the property, similar to the right-of-way. And I think that will certainly address a lot of the concerns, but there's also the need to increase supportive services. And so we will also be looking at how we can more effectively and in a more sustained way address the areas where people are chronically unhoused, and see if we can have some rapid rehousing services for them. And I will take you up on the conversation with the county, and they've been good partners with our mental health, behavioral health initiative with Network 180, both in the homeless outreach as well as police co-response. But I think we're looking for more of their leadership from the public health perspective, is what I'm hearing, and so we will be addressing that. And then there's a matter of enforcement for when there are infractions, both for bringing people into compliance, because that's what we ultimately want. We want to see lack of arrestable types of offenses, more compliance, de-escalated type of interactions. But when there is a case where there are aggressive or violent behavior, we have talked to the police chief about making sure that there is a response. We've looked at other ways in making sure people feel safe with private security. But there are times where you will only need a police officer to do that. And I know that the police department is challenged, but we have talked to our police chief. He's not here today, but I feel confident that if the collective impact of all of this is implemented, that we would see better outcomes. So I would need some formal type of recommendation that the staff can carry forward and vote.
That was my next move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll turn to my colleagues and see if anyone would willing to make a formal recommendation from this body.
And I'll look to city attorney if I need to, if it's not clear enough. So I'd like to make a motion to ask the city manager to work with the rest of the team to bring forth resolution items that would address the three pieces: the personal property, what could be considered loitering, or the financial transaction pieces, and then continuing to refine those park ordinances that may also deal with the above two mentioned items. Is that too long?
Your support?
I'd second that motion. We want to make sure that we get this done ASAP, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So can we
In
put
June.
into our June meeting?
Yes.
In June, I'll say. June 23, not.
I second that one, too.
Very good. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion?
Just for clarification, so we will introduce it, and I think our process would be to set a future hearing as part of the introduction for public comment on whatever proposed changes we would have. I mentioned earlier that regarding this, that we need to increase some of the supportive services. So if there could be after this action, any additional recommendations regarding services would be appreciated as well.
All right. No further discussion about the motion on the floor. We'll call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all. And I just think as it relates to the wraparound services, we're continuing the analysis of where the gaps exist. There has been talk about the Fusion Center, about some of the other organizations coming together, and I hope and believe that there's going to be some coordinated action to both support whatever policy changes we come up with, but also enforcing the existing ordinances that we have in place, and not just enforcement from the police department, but including, education about those ordinances from, Public Works and from Parks Department employees and from service providers and mental health professionals to let people know what the actual rules are and what the expectations for behavior is. I think that's part of the missing component. It's not that we're trying to. People just need to understand the rules before they can follow the rules. So, anything else you need from us, City Manager?
No, I think we can move forward. I do want to, before we conclude, at the last meeting when we discussed the increased accountability around the housing first approach, and particularly street outreach, we had a number of people from the nonprofit community, COC, Housing Kent, to help us understand the service delivery model, some of the limitations. And Mel Trotter Ministries was not able to offer any commentary at the last meeting. And so before we conclude this discussion, I see Mr. Van Kempen is here. If it pleases the chair, if there's something that needs clarification from Mel Trotter that was on the record, would ask that we have that clarity now.
Sure. Mr. Van Kammen, would you like to address anything in particular, sir?
Yeah, really. Thanks for that advance notice. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think what we would want to respond to is probably two things. First, it seems that at times there are some misconceptions around the services that are being provided. So, I was just at a luncheon meeting this afternoon, and during the Q&A, somebody said, "Why do you guys kick everybody out in the morning?" And gosh, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, I would be able to fund Mel Trotter and the city all at once. Because the truth is we don't. The truth is that we don't force anyone to leave. Everyone can stay. The reason there are so many people on the streets during the day is not because there's no place for them to go. It's because if we were to stay at our house for a week, who among us would stay inside for 7 days, 24 hours? We would spend time in our backyards and our front porches. The people that we serve don't have a backyard and they don't have a front porch. So they go to the only places that they have available to them, which is the public spaces. So I wanted to address the misconceptions about whether or not people are kicked out. They are not. The second thing was around outreach. We, as long as many other organizations, we've been doing outreach for a long, long time. The challenges that we've been having in outreach is not that people don't know about the services available to them. It's not that people don't know about housing. It's not that people don't even have a misconception around what's expected of them. The challenge with our outreach, what our outreach team is telling us, is that most of the people that we encounter that we know on a first name basis choose not to engage in those supportive services. Some people choose not to engage in the things that are offered to them because they frankly like the choices that they're making. Other people choose not to engage, as was mentioned earlier, because they lack the mental capacity to make a better choice. I lay awake at night in the winter because I know that when there are 30 below zero wind chills, I know there are people without winter coats that are on our streets that our outreach team, the HOT team, other outreach teams are engaging and saying, you have to come in. I'm not coming in. And there is no mechanism to protect this person from the poor choice that they may not be able to make on their own, which, Mr. Kettle, I so appreciate what you're saying about what we need to advocate on the state level for. Mr. Ward was here from Network 180 a month ago and said the exact same thing. We need some action at the state level that allows us to frankly do the compassionate thing, because it is not compassionate to leave someone out on the street, even if they say it's their choice, if they don't have the capability to make that choice. And the last thing I would say, because I didn't prepare a speech, city manager, but
You just sent us a letter, so just go off your letter.
I could pull that up and read it, yeah. Our organization, I really appreciate Commissioner Itasasi with what you said about one nonprofit leader to another where we're so great, just listen to us, right? And I don't think the community benefits from that. One of the things we've been doing at Mel Trotter is trying to look ourselves in the mirror as an organization and say, what are the things that we do well and where are the things that we need to do better? And there are a lot of things that we need to do better. But what I can tell you is we're not the organization we were 10 years ago, and we're doing a lot of things better than we did 10 years ago. But having said that, we are the largest service provider, second largest service provider in the state of Michigan. We do interact with a vast majority of people experiencing homelessness in one way or another. And I would say two things. One is we stand ready to work with anyone, city, county, state, any other organization, to come up with common sense solutions that we can implement and make this better for all. Second, I think that my request maybe of the governing body would be to perhaps include more people on the ground when we're having serious discussions for their input. Sometimes we sit in meetings and we read minutes and we hear things and we say, well, where are they getting their information from? Had I known that we were going to have this opportunity, I would have brought Tyler with me. Tyler leads our outreach. I can give you data all day. But if Tyler, who's out on the streets every single day, was standing up here sharing with you exactly what he sees, I think that's something we need to pay attention to. So my request would be that we allow more space for people with lived experience and people with boots on the ground to talk about what really is happening out there. So.
Thank you, sir. Any closing comments?
I think it'd be interesting to have the mental health community get together and give us their best ideas, their best plan. This is our wish list. You know, maybe you've already done this. I don't know. I'm just a regular guy. But I think that would be find out what the maximum could be, should be, from the professionals, and then start to build based on that, not just on, you know, angry people or whatever, you know, just have the professionals tell us what this is what we need, and then go pound the people that have the money and make them give it to us.
Thanks, sir. City Manager, any following closing comments? All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and we will conclude this meeting at 2:46. Thank you all.